it's Ayla. I wanted to do a little response video to the video Lauren Southern did yesterday. She did a video on identity politics and she did a marvelous job, and she summed up a lot of how I got to the place that I'm at regarding identity politics and how I view identity politics. It was just brilliantly done. I encourage you to run over to her YouTube channel and check that out. But I kind of wanted to make a little like response video, not exactly to, I'm not rebutting anything that she had to say, but I did want to add just some of my own ideas, because her journey is very much the journey I took about 2 years ago when I was coming out of libertarianism and more into like the alt-right movement or the identitarian movement. And a lot of the conclusions that she came to were conclusions I did as well. But being a Christian, I also had like another layer onto some of these ideas around politics and identity politics. And so basically, if you haven't seen the video, what Lauren was saying is, and I have a little quote here, to unite people by a common trait, we have to unite people by a common trait, or we will never get things done. All politics is identity politics. And she's completely right about that. And what I realized a couple years back was that you cannot separate someone's tribal identity, from how they're going to vote politically. What we need to be really careful about as a society is understanding which identities are helpful and are building toward a good future for our posterity and that are honoring to those who came before us and built the civilization we live in. And then we have to look at the identity groups that are counter to that are actually destructive and degenerate and deconstructing that. And so that's the interesting thing about identity politics, is like a lot of things in the world, you have a good-bad dynamic to it. There are very good identity politics and there are very bad identity politics. And this egalitarian way we have of thinking now that all things are equal and all systems are equal and there's no rules and there's no fence posts kind of wants to equate all identity politics as the same. And I think that it is perfectly moral, rational, and reasonable to call out bad identity politics and to emphasize good identity politics. Now, why do we need to emphasize good identity politics? Basically, no man is an island, okay? No one person in their lifetime is going to move things forward. Think of some of the most successful people in all of human history. Even think of somebody like Trump. Right now, he's obviously been a tremendous success in his life, in his lifespan. He has accomplished a lot career-wise. He's accumulated a lot of money. He managed to become the president of the United States. And let's say, hypothetically, he even gets everything done that he wants to do. And he, builds a border, and we have the Muslim ban, and he brings back jobs to rural America, and everything gets done. But if you're looking at the whole span of human history, how much of a mark is he actually making? He's slightly nudging us in a better trajectory, and that's important, yes, but that is like the topmost that any one person could ever do in their life, is like nudge a civilization in a different trajectory. We don't really see one person in their lifetime being able to accomplish the things that need to be accomplished in order to move civilization forward. We have to stand on the shoulders of giants of the past, and we also have to work collectively right now. I am not just myself. I am my mother and my grandmother and my great-grandmother. And I am not just myself. I am my daughter and my granddaughter, my great-granddaughter, and on. I'm a link in a chain. We are all links in a chain. So that one link can't decide that it's going to go and do its own thing and come up with its own value system and its own way of voting and, its own ideals. That simply doesn't work. That's been the politics that we've had at least since the 1960s, going back to maybe the French Revolution. You could even go back to Martin Luther and the Reformation. These are the kind of ideas that we've had cropping up since these time periods, that one person can completely rewrite an idea of what is going on and not rely on their tradition and not rely on the fact that they are part of a general broad movement. Now, what has happened today in modern days is that the movements that we should belong to should be our family, our race, our culture, and our religion. And those have been completely obliterated by these like Marxist politics, and they've been replaced by things like sexual identity, number one. Over almost anything, you'll see that the most contentious things right now are sexual identity politics. People want to adhere to a different tribe. They want to leave their family tribe, their race tribe, their religious tribe, their traditional tribe, their cultural tribe, and they want to tribe up with other people based on sexual preferences only. So this is what you see in the homosexual movement, the bisexuals, the transgendered, the omnigendered, all of this nonsense that's going on today. And so they've rejected good identity politics, and they've attached themselves, because nature abhors a vacuum. You are an identity. You have an identity and you are a tribe. And when you crush what you are and throw it away and you say, this is irrelevant, my family is irrelevant, my race is irrelevant, my culture is irrelevant, my country is irrelevant, you have to fill that void with something else. And I've talked a lot about this before, and about sexual politics, particularly the homosexual agenda, filling that, particularly for young white kids, because we're raised and told that we don't have an identity, we don't have a culture, and homosexuality and now transgenderism gives people a tribe, a culture, an identity. It has its own costuming, it has its own phrases, its own language. And so they latch onto that and they become fiercely protective of that, because that is a natural human state of being, is to be fiercely protective about our tribe and about who is in the tribe, and is the tribe doing well, and trying to establish territory for that tribe. So that's what we see with these counter politics now. Feminism is another great example. It's the same thing. You know, women have tossed out the traditional roles, the traditional values, their religion, country, patriotism, nationalism, race identity, ethnic heritage, and they've latched onto this idea of feminism, and it has its own, you know, agendas and rules and structure and language and inside jokes and its own enemy to fight, and that's an important thing. So when, you know, for example, if you're a Christian, you know, the enemy that you're fighting is the devil, and a lot of times it's the devil within. It's trying to make yourself more like Christ and trying to come unto Christ and to repent of your own sins. And when you don't have that to fight to make yourself better, when you're over in the feminist camp and the homosexual camp, then you've got to create enemies out of, you know, whoever's available. What is it? Cis, hetero, white men, or the religious institutions that still won't allow gay marriage, or the government, or whatever it is. They have to find an enemy, and they'll invent one if there isn't one. And that's why we see a lot of people lying in the press about trying to make people Nazis, trying to, you know, say it's okay to punch a Nazi. They're trying to, they've entered this world where there really isn't much to fight anymore. We've taken care of a lot of really egregious wrongs that were happening in our society, and with nothing left to fight, they simply will make something up. And what they really should be doing is focusing on fighting the real battles. So how do we know what's good identity politics and what's bad identity politics? And basically, I would say we would go to the Bible on this. And even if you're not a Christian, let me give you a reason why you should go to the Bible on this. Again, the Bible, even if you don't believe in God, at least at the very basic minimum, is a compilation of the most important things that were written down over thousands of years, over, you know, hundreds and hundreds of generations of people. And it was the most precious information that they had that they could pass on to their posterity. And so you can learn from that, even if you don't literally believe that there is a God. You can look at this as an ancestral book of Western people, because that's exactly what it is. And it's a guide for building Western civilization, because that's what the people who believed in this book did. They built Western civilization. So when we go to the Bible, we can see that certain things like feminism and homosexuality and, you know, communism and social Marxism, these are all sinful things. These are all called out very plainly in the scriptures. And then we can see the positive things that we could be very tribal about, and that would be our family, which is, of course, you know, the traditional family is spoken of very highly in the scriptures. It is given precedence in the scriptures in the scriptures as something important, something of value, something that makes us happy, something that is godly, is a godly way of life. To be fruitful and multiply was one of the first commandments ever given to human beings by God. And then we can see also that, God created the races. That's in the story after the flood in the sons of Noah. And he created the races, and then he set them in their own lands. And when they tried to build the Tower of Babel, he confounded the languages and scattered them across the earth. And he gave us homelands, and he gave us races, and he gave us families, and he gave us faith in him. And that's manifested in lots of different ways. So we have Protestants, we have Catholics, we have Mormons, we have Jehovah's Witnesses, we have a lot of different types of Christians. But the main thing is we can look at ourselves tribally as a Christian, or you can look at yourself as a Catholic specifically, or an Orthodox Christian, Greek Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, whatever your thing is. You can tribe up around that identity however you see fit and really fight for that. So these are godly things that are in the Bible that we know are good ways to practice identity politics: race, religion, family, country. Again, blessed is the nation that has as God ruling over it, and all of these scriptures that tell us these sorts of things. So patriotism, nationalism, heritage, race identity, honoring our ancestors, that is, all through Proverbs, it's talking about children honoring their parents, and how parents should treat their children right, etc. So these are all notions that are taught to us in the Bible that are positive identities, positive tribal things to group up around and to fight for. And then we are given sins in the Bible that are negative things that we should not be engaging in on an identity politics level. And so I'm just going to leave it there. That's my idea. So when we're talking about identity politics, that is a really easy way to figure out what is a good identity to be grouping onto, and what is a negative identity to be grouping onto. And it is perfectly okay to call the negative identities out. It is not hypocritical at all to say, yes, there is a reality of good versus evil in our world. This is bad and this is good. And we know that, not only through time-tested traditions of our ancestors, but through the scriptures. Thanks for watching. Bye.